you have to have courage for the sake of our society, for the sake of your children and future generations, or it's only going to go farther and farther down this path.
All right, so if we take all of that information that we just got done talking about, and that is by no means exhaustive information.
That was, of course, scattered and all over the place because we're just fired up about it still.
Yeah. So there's
hey, it's not going away, friends.
No.
It's not going away. As much as you wish it would, make your life easier.
Yeah. Well, and it would only make your life easier in the present.
Right, you think it would.
Yeah. And by the way, we're not advocating or fighting for a certain outcome. That's not what we're here to do. We're not sitting here and going, only if the outcome is Trump wins will we be okay with it. That's not our heart in all of this. Our heart is election integrity. And that ought to be something we can all rally around as a country. It blows my mind that the media has so divided us that is an issue, that we're not even interested in election integrity. We're only interested in our own selfish desires for our own outcome to be what we want it to be. Like, that's absurd to me that we have gotten to that place. So I need to say that before we dive into this. Okay. So, all right. So our attitudes moving forward, we've heard a lot of people back and forth on Facebook and in comments of like, I just want it to go away. I just want to move on. Like, we as Christians, we just need to find peace with everything and just move forward. God is in control. Let's pray more. Right? Like all those things. There's that crew. And then there's the crew over here that's like, no, you know what? Let's fight. Let's pick up our guns and let's go to war. Like, we're not letting it go away. And so you have these like two extremes of Christians. And then these Christians go, oh, you bunch of sissy coward, and throw rocks over here. And I'll be honest, I'm more in that crowd. And I have to pull myself back from that crowd at times because I am that guy. And I'm like, I'm sick of this. Bunch of passive Christian. I go crazy, so I have to pull back. I just repent on air. But then you have the other side that looks at this side and they're just like, oh, y'all are so uncompassionate, unchristlike. What would Jesus do? And And anyways, you have these groups. And so what we need to start to ask ourselves is what should be the direction and the attitude of our hearts as we as the church move forward. And I am personally under the opinion, and me and Dustin might have a little bit of it. I don't think we'll differ much, but we might differ a little bit on this, so it might be interesting to talk about. But I don't think it's ever God's heart to sacrifice truth at the altar of peace, right? At the altar of peace. So you have to sacrifice the truth to find the peace. I think that's what the evangelical church has done for a long time in this country. Right? We have sacrificed the truth at the altar of peace, at the altar of getting along, at the altar of comfort, right? And so we find ourselves even now in this election process, sacrificing the truth of the election at the altar of let's just find some peace. And if you think the left is going to just find peace and move forward, you're wrong. They are going to do this the rest of your life, right? They're not advocating for peace. Look at Joe Biden, look at Kamala Harris. They're not advocating for peace. They're advocating for peace on their terms. And that's not peace. That's not peace when somebody tells you, hey, we'll have peace as long as you do what we want you to do. That's slavery of some sort, right? So we need to talk about like how are we as Christians, as those who should honor the truth and seek out the truth and hold up the truth, like how should our attitudes be as we start to move forward in this country? And how should we talk about these things with our friends and family and in our relationships? How should we talk about these things on social media? How can you seek out truth in a compassionate way without wanting to pick up a gun and just go to war? Anyways, I'm just throwing that out there if you want to read that.
Yeah. I mean, well, like you said, you can't sacrifice truth for the sake of peace, because in the end, it really is no peace, in that it doesn't honor God. Peace is not honoring to God. It's how we get to peace. It's certainly to strive for peace, but yet we can't. There can be no peace on a false reality.
Yeah.
And like you said, if we even if the outcome was just simply that we didn't, another, one of the ironies of all this is that in 2016, when Trump won the election, then the resistance, #resistance, went to work immediately to try to undermine his administration and worked relentlessly for 4 years at trying to take Trump out in every means possible, being very willing to lie and make things up along the way.
Undermine his integrity, undermine his position, undermine everything.
Yeah. Using inflammatory rhetoric, calling him and all of his supporters racist, xenophobic, homophobic, all these things that are untrue. Simply because there's differences in policy positions that people don't like, and then they use these slanderous labels and terms and perpetuate it in the media, and so gaslight the population that to this day, you have a meaningful percent of the population who believe in lies, not only about the man who was president for 4 years, who I'd argue is one of the best presidents that we've ever had in terms of what he got done along the way, and that is a benefit to the most amount of Americans. But yeah, and so there's all those efforts there that were spent trying to undermine and take Trump out. There was no effort to be at peace with the situation on their part. Even though there actually was no Russia collusion and all these things. If anything, the evidence showed, and what will continue to come out, is that they themselves were the ones conspiring.
No, it has already come out.
Yeah, well, it'll come out more and more and more and more.
The Clinton administration had been spying on the Trump campaign. Like, that is a fact. That is not maybe, sort of, kind of.
Obama administration, Clinton campaign, Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Intelligence agencies, some of our supposed foreign allies, all of that is there. Of course, the media, they didn't cover the truth of it. They did cover the lie of it. But now, 2020 comes along, and there is all this legitimate concern around election fraud. Plenty of evidences. They're the same establishment apparatus is unwilling to look at that, urging everyone just to move forward and accept the outcome. And, let's come together and unify as a country, while at the same time calling half the country that is concerned about this outcome traitors, insurrectionists.
You said this. You said
domestic terrorists.
The irony of the Capitol thing is like that. A couple hundred people broke into the Capitol out of 800,000 people, and they were saying that's a threat to our democracy. And you brought the irony up of, no, an election theft is the threat to our democracy, right? So they were hoping, by the way, that hundreds of thousands would storm into that Capitol building. They already had decided to make that a big deal before that became a big deal. Right? Because if you think about the media, they have spun this whole thing and made us the insurrectionists instead of them to get our mind off of election fraud, to spin it so they could head in a different direction with it, just so we would forget about what really happened. That is what the media is always up to. And if you got to start to see these things, go back all the way to 2008. Think about the last 12 years. We elected in this country a black president in 2008. We were as together could be, right? And it was a moment in our history that we could have moved on past all of all the racial issues, right? But what did Obama do? What did the Democratic campaign, the Democratic administration, what did they do instead of looking at this as an opportunity to unify our country? Biden will say unity. Instead of using this, every time Obama did something wrong, what'd he say? It's because we're racist. It's because we're racist. 70 million people voted for me, but we're racist. We're still a racist country. And so he'd always blame it on racism. And then by the time we got to the end of the Obama administration, people were sick of it, to the point that we elected a reality TV host just because he put the middle finger up at all these suckers that were like, America's a no good, terrible, awful, racist, bigoted, homophobic country. And we were like, man, we just elected Obama in 08. Screw y'all. Yeah, we'll take Trump. Yeah, doesn't matter he was on The Apprentice. We want him because he said America is a great country. And so we elected him. And then what'd they do? They, like Dustin said, they took off again. We got to figure out how to destroy this candidate so we can get our people back into office. And then what happens just in November? 30 plus executive orders. Well, we better put this thing into hyperspeed because, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. More executive orders than we've ever seen in a president. And he's just like, boom, boom, boom.
The last month.
Right. I mean, it's going wild, right? So they're putting it all into hyperspeed now, trying to get us back to where Trump might have messed up their little plan, right? I mean, I'm not trying to go off on that tangent, but it all matters. Like all that, seeing this whole thing play out matters. You need to broaden your timeline so you can see what's going on.
And to get past the rhetoric, to see, like we've elaborated on in many previous videos, but our conviction in much of the country's conviction is that the policies under Trump were beneficial to our nation, in our economy, in our national security, and all of these things that in principle were good things. We believed they were good things, and we were glad about that. And we were not only proud of who we are as a nation, but the direction in our hopefulness for the future prosperity of our country based on principled outcomes. And now our concern is the reversal of those many things, all based on a lie of a stolen election. And yet we're being accused of the ones who are lying, who are being deceived, who are being petty, who can't let it go, these kind of things. And as a Christian, it is dishonoring to God to move forward in such a lie around the election integrity, as well as what's actually good for our country. I mean, if you just simply take the abortion issue as another kind of angle on it, the most pro-life president in history in action, in results, and we're moving now away from in the reversal of those things. And so, I mean, it's just, there's a lot there that we have legitimate concerns of where our country will be going, again, based on the lie of a stolen election. And so we cannot sit by and let this happen without speaking out, without insisting on the truth. Now, it is an important issue how we handle ourselves in the process, but what are we doing? We're just talking about it. We're insisting that we look at the information and give it the fair opportunity in the court of law. Not that though some people are so frustrated by it all, and if would have our point of view, then surely you could maybe understand why we'd be frustrated and angry about it. But in the temptation of some who can't handle their emotions as well, who want to get more physically riled up and take matters into your own hands.
Dustin has to talk me off that cliff often.
But we're attempting to use the proper means and channels. For the most part, you have people who get out of hand, whether that's the minority of people on the Capitol. And again, that's an issue that ought to be investigated further to find out what really went on that day. And of course, like you're saying, how the media has spun that as an act of domestic terrorism, when in fact, the summer before, you had series after series of protests
burning down to the ground.
Turned riots by a minority of people still, surely. But there was all kinds of awful things happening, and they were ignoring that.
It was peaceful. It was a peaceful
mostly
protest.
Peaceful as the city burns.
And now Black Lives Matter, by the way, just came out this past week in D.C. saying, if we don't get our $2,000 check, burn it down. And I'm like, why is that not being reported on? Burn it. They're chanting, burn it down without our $2,000 check. And I'm like, Okay, yeah. I'm gonna find that in the media.
But
wow, it's not there.
We're the ones being irrational and violent, and I mean, the insanity of all of these things is beyond frustrating. But by the grace of God, we can remain dignified in these things, and what it does.
So, how do we move on? What do we do? Like practical steps.
Yeah.
Because I know that's the toughest question, right? Practical steps in all this.
Well, I think the main point that we've been making the last few minutes is to fight for the truth.
Yeah.
To fight with ideas and on the actual truth of things, and for those things to see the light of day and to be judged by people who are unbiased and to determine a rule, a true and just outcome. I mean, is that a wrong desire?
Yeah.
But beyond that, what this shows us in the process is that our system is so thoroughly corrupt through and through. And so whether that means, what we're doing is, and what Mike Lindell tried to do, and so many of these alternative forms of media and YouTube channels and all these people popping up, it's maybe not the most professional and glamorous. It doesn't have the reputation, but we're just trying to get at the truth and get it out there. So there's that element of, journalism. Ought there be a return to integrity in the profession of journalism so that it's not just fake news everywhere you go and everywhere you look and turn that is brainwashing the population? Beyond that, don't we need to get more involved in the civic process?
Yes.
Because we have plenty of our leaders who are either corrupt in some way because they've sought their own financial or material gain, their own political career out of it. Maybe they're blackmailed. Maybe they're concerned because they were threatened that their family or somebody would be at risk if they didn't go along with this. Maybe it's the peer pressure. Maybe it's the cultural corruption that we're all victim to, where we just go along to get along and we submit to the pressure of those around us with the loudest voice who intimidate us to keep quiet. I know there's a lot of people out there who agree with what we're saying, but don't say anything. They don't speak up because they're afraid of what their friends might think, or they're afraid of there might be some repercussion in their job, which I get that there's concerns there, and that pressure works, but
that just perpetuates it to where now
and it gets worse.
Your kids are going to have to deal with it.
Right, and it is ultimately you have to step up and recognize you have to have courage for the sake of our society, for the sake of your children and future generations, or it's only going to go farther and farther down this path. Because
they've already showed their hands, right? He was talking about how deeply corrupt our system is, and you might be thinking just political system. Not true. We've had election fraud. We've talked about that, Mike Lindell. You also had a group in Parler. You had big tech basically telling the American people, screw you. Like they literally came out and said, screw you, you're not starting a new platform. We own these platforms. And they consolidated together across party lines in big tech. Amazon, Google, Twitter, all these groups came together to squash Parler. I mean, literally to come out and squash Parler, where 10 million people had flocked to because we wanted free speech. We wanted again, in social media, for someone to be able to disagree with us and not be censored for it. I want that. I don't care if you disagree or agree with me. You should be able to say whatever you want to say. That's the point of the First Amendment. But we saw there, and then we saw in our markets, Wall Street beats come together, and a group come together and pump up a stock because all these suckers that were shorting stocks. And a lot of people might go, that's not good for our markets. And I get that. I understand those people. But at the same time, the other side's been doing it for years. They print freaking money and they watch what the general public is buying, and they're like, okay, let's throw all this money we printed at it, let's short this thing, and let's get our money. So they've been screwing the public for years, and then finally when the public says, no, I'm going to screw you, they're like, oh, no. Let's, cut off Robinhood. And there are people on Robinhood, get this, you might not know this, there are people on Robinhood that went to bed one night, woke up the next day, and their stock had been sold by the app. What the heck? What is going on? Not only did Robinhood cut their people off, they started selling people's stock.
you have this article that came out in Time Magazine last week where they admit that they conspired together, all these major institutions, including the United States Chamber of Commerce and from the business side of things. They admit how Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into the election kind of organization system. They advocated to change election laws. They subverted laws to change the election laws. They admit doing all these things, not that they stole the election, but they had to do it to protect democracy. They had to work together because the threat from Trump was so serious. They're now admitting, and they're probably
don't even care.
They're probably trying to get ahead of what they know is coming, perhaps, because you also strangely have a lot of high-level CEOs and other people resigning. That's a curious thing, but we won't get into that or any of these anomalies that exist. But you have them now coming out and admitting, we had to work together to protect democracy, not subvert it, not manipulate the population, not distort the democratic process. We had to do it for your own good. Yeah. Trust us. We're having to censor these platforms.
Let us take the weight for you. We'll take that responsibility for you. We're going to take your freedom at the same time. We're not going to take that part, but we'll take the responsibility and the weight of it all.
Well, and this is the threat that you give up your democracy and your rights and those protections for your safety.
Yes.
Or the appearance of. And so, again, if people in the population can't be aware enough of these basic facts of things happening, as well as the picture of what it means. I mean, are people really supportive of the widespread censorship that happened through social media in the last year to censor only one side of the political spectrum, including the President of the United States of America? So that's not concerning to you? Because if it's not, then we are not your real concern. There is these are fascist. This is not hyperbolic rhetoric. These are fascist tactics, people, that are not creeping up on us. They are in your face.
And the powers to be have had control for so long that they are willing to go to any extent to hold on to that control. Any extent. And so it brings me to this, and you're not going to like this. You're not going to like this part. Whose fault is all this? It's your fault. It's my fault. It's our fault. Because everything else has become so... we have allowed them to entertain us and lull us to sleep to the point that they have done whatever they've wanted to because you're more concerned with your TV show or with Pee Wee sports or sports in general. We watched Super Bowl. We couldn't even hardly watch Super Bowl last night. I ain't watched the game all year. I've just quit watching football as they've got more political. I ain't turned on ESPN in probably 2 years. But we have been lulled asleep and allowed them to control everything because we don't even know how the system works anymore. You can go out to people and try to talk to them about your local governance. They have no idea even how the system works, much less how to challenge it. And so we're in this place where we have allowed them to take our freedoms by entertaining us while they collect a paycheck off of us. So it's our fault. Like Dustin said, it's time to get involved in the things that matter rather than spending all our time in these other things that don't matter. And it's our fault because we no longer live with conviction in the things that we say we believe. I've never wanted to get into this game because it's a horrible game for a society and a culture to step into. But the left has been canceling everything from sliced bread to TV shows that they don't like because it doesn't align with them. And that's kind of a society sucks. But you know what? I'm done buying certain things. I will not shop on Amazon anymore. I won't. I'm done. I'm done shopping on Amazon. Screw Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, until we start to go, okay, these things matter so much, I'm going to, you know where you can hurt them? The one thing that doesn't have bias is greed. That's the one thing. And if we would stop using these people, then we would affect these people, because that's the only thing these people care about. They care about greed and they care about power. You know how you take it away from them? You stop using them. You stop using them. Now, is it a little bit more inconvenient for me not to buy on Amazon? Yeah, it is. It's way more convenient to go to Amazon. Is it maybe a little bit cheaper for me to go to Amazon? Yes. But what am I giving up? What am I selling out of convenience? And that's where we are. That's where the American church is. We go to churches because it's more convenient for us. Well, I don't like that worship music. I'm going to go this one down here. Oh, we gotta actually do some extra studying and reading. You're not going to put the Bible on the screen for me. I got to have a Bible. Oh, right. I mean, it's all about, we've become so just pathetic in so many different ways. And that's why we're losing our country. That's why we're losing our culture. That's why we're losing our society, because we don't live with conviction anymore in any area of our life.
We don't take responsibility.
We don't take responsibility, right? And so I'm taking responsibility. I've done some things all the way up to this point that I'm changing in 2021. I'm not going to do these things anymore. And you know, if I'm the only one that does it, will it affect anything? No. But you know what? I can live with that. I can live with that. Which brings me into the next point. Where might be the presence of God in all this?